No, I'm carrying the baton for a lot of people, men and women, but there is precedent for what we do. There is a reason for people like myself or Mort Saul or folks who are observational, and we have a part of the legacy of the country. I started out as a straight actor, and some of my characters were comedic or said some fun stuff. And I think after a point, people didn't know what I was because I kept doing stuff that didn't seem to fit in what I was supposed to be doing. But the truth of the matter is, I was what I believed actors were supposed to be, and that was versatile. So I feel and felt that I could do everything that was asked. And so I did. Well, she's important because there wasn't anybody, no woman before her doing what she did. So I just sort of felt that it was important that that be part of the history of entertainment. She was the highest paid performer, particularly at the Apollo, but woman, comedy, comic, forever, just making a lot of money for a black female, She had a very specific point of view and a way of talking about things, and people sort of could relate to her in a different way, in a way they couldn't relate to other people. And so working as she did, because nobody was following any of these black performers around, it was a very limited audience until the 60s. And then it was much bigger and much more people understood and got her. No, I'm carrying the baton for a lot of people, men and women, but there is precedent for what we do. There is a reason for people like myself or Mort Saul or folks who are observational, and we have a part of the legacy of the country, and we will tell you what we see. Some of it funny, some of it, kind of biting. But that's, there are some comics whose job that is, and I feel like I'm one of those comics. So I go with Richard or George Carlin or, I don't know. There's a whole plethora of people. Well, she's always been moms from the latter part of the 1920s till when you saw her. She was always that character. But I'm sure the material changed, but we will never know because we have no access to it. No one taped it. It isn't there. So we don't know what she honed and moved, and, we don't know. Well, as a little kid, I mean, I was a sci-fi fan always and a horror movie fan, and before Gene Roddenberry put together Star Trek, there were no black people in the future. Not according to science fiction, anyway. And then you had Lieutenant Uhura, and she was really stunningly beautiful and had that job down. She's a communications officer, and she knew what she was doing, and she was an integral part. She wasn't below someone. She wasn't, subservient to anyone. She was part of the crew. And I loved that. I loved seeing that. And it was a refreshing piece of information to know that we would be in the future. I'm exactly the reason he was talking about, because sometimes we don't know who we're reaching when we do the things that we do, and for me, it was huge. It was huge, and not just because she was a black woman, but because not only that, but she was a smart, intelligent part of the crew. Things could not happen without talking to her as well. So I love that. I love that it wasn't just, oh, she's cooking, making that stuff in push the button and the food sets up, there weren't a lot of black folks on television before her. You had Amos and Andy, you know, who were business owners, by the way. You had Beulah, who was the lady that took care of these people's house because they were too dumb to do it for themselves. You know, so you had all of these sort of stereotypes that were sort of freaked, you know, and people didn't really realize that they were sort of different than the stereotypes that had been before, you know. Because when you look at the ability of Amos and Andy to get stuff done with his taxi to take care of business, these were all businessmen. Now, granted, they spoke in a dialect, but they were businessmen and business owners at the time. I mean, first and foremost, yeah, it was funny. I mean, they were good. Listen, you look at these actors and you know, I wish they were around to talk about what they went through, like Oscar Micheaux, you know. To be in the entertainment business, 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, was not easy. And so to have them translate to television, you know, to have to go from Amos and Andy, who were two white guys on the radio, and they were like, oh, we want to put it on, we better make them black. Yeah, hello. You know, give us the job. It's our job. What are you doing? So, you know, it was a good shakeout, I think. Listen, you take the work. Sure. You know, listen, change doesn't happen overnight. It's taken a long time, and sometimes we slip backwards, and, you know, but the reality is, yeah, you know, what did she say? Hattie McDaniel used to get a lot of crap for the role she played. And she really, at one point, said, you know, better to play the maid than to be the maid. You know, Stephen Fetchit, one of the highest paid actors, higher than anybody. That's what he did. But when he wasn't working, he had 6, 7 cars, lived beautifully and very well, you know, and you say, okay, this is what there is. When there's something different, that's what I'll do. But until then, this is what it is. Me, 70 years later. Yeah, but nobody thinks about that. They jump right to Hallie, so.
Well, not in this room.
Well, thank you. A great lady won, and had she not won, I might have been a little snippy about it, but Geraldine was a magnificent actress who I sort of think was punished for being a New York actress, and so they never gave her, in the 7 or 8 times she was nominated, the Oscar until then. So I don't mind that it was Geraldine. Page, by the way. No, but I will say, it just between you, me, and everybody else, I like having it. I'm okay with it. You know, we saw the amount of anger and racial hatred that was brought up from that sweet commercial, the Cheerios commercial. We saw what happened, the kind of racial hatred that popped up when this wonderful little boy sang, you know, in Texas for the finals between the Heat and San Antonio, you know, and the racist stuff that came about from that. No, we're not over that. We're not over that. But I really do believe that those racists are, you know, people can be anonymous and say anything they want, you know. Say it to somebody's face and see what happens. But they won't. You know, Cosby's as real as Archie Bunker, you know. And it's just real for Spanish folks and Italian folks and Greek folks and black folks and, you know, all of those things are all of those people. We all have it. We all have those things in us. You know, whether it's a Cosby and, you know, here's I want my family and I'm going to take my middle class family and move them forward. Or, you know, my crazy uncle is coming to dinner, you know, and he's Archie Bunker, you know. It's America. I thought that was a very nice vision of America because no one got shut down. You know, Archie got taught and he learned some stuff, whether he wanted it to be that way or not. But nobody ever shut him down. You know, I'm sure it was life for some people, but, you know, Sanford and Son is harder to know because, of course, it was an English series first. So, you know, it's, who knows, you know, who knows? You'd be lucky to find a junk shop now. Well, I mean, Richard was unique for so many reasons. I mean, he told the greatest stories. He just told great stories and was funny. You know, funny about himself, funny about the world. He was one of those interpreters of what he was seeing. For me, stories are easier to follow. I like when somebody tells me a story and then hands me what I need to have within the story. So that's what he did, and so that's what I liked. You know, I liked this idea of characters. The reason I started doing characters was to prove that I could do it. Mostly because, you know, in those days you'd try to get a job on a stage and, you know, somebody would say, well, you know, what would you know about Shakespeare? What would you know about, you know? And it's kind of like, well, how about this? And so, you know, you would sort of put something together that they could follow. Also, I like being able to improvise. So that's why I put my characters together, because I could talk about whatever I wanted, when I wanted, the way I wanted, and nobody would know. Nobody would ever know if that was the way it was supposed to be, or if I forgot something in the telling of a story, I'd just take it some other direction, and nobody knew that that was what happened, only me. What he did do is so amazing. I mean, there's the two that are my favorite. There's one where he's in a Kiss kind of band, and he's dressed. He's got an afro and he's leather, and you know he's singing with the band, and you can't quite understand what he's singing, but the audience is filled with kids. And you see Richard throwing stuff out, you know, and he's singing it, and kids, you know, 10, 15 kids disappear. They just sort of pass, they're gone. And then he throws something else out, and it happens again. And then by the end of the piece, he has thrown what you realize is all these pill-looking things out to the kids. And by the end of the piece, they're all done. They're all down. And it ends with him just going, It was the scariest thing I'd ever seen, but I totally understood it. Like, I got it. And the other one, you know, is there's two. You know, you saw the the opening where Richard says what he has to give up. I mean, their genius, or him going the closer, you know that commercial, the closer you get, the better you look, the closer you get, the better she looks, was the guy running, and Richard is doing this commercial, and you see him running towards a white woman, and then you see a shotgun come up, and he runs past her. I mean, it's fantastic, you know, but, you know, he couldn't be blue. They wouldn't allow that. But and people didn't get how smart and funny what he was doing was. Now, you know, you would kill to have that kind of quality. But, yeah, I think it lasted one season. Sorry to see it go, I was. Well, no, Rob and I are quite. Now I have to tell you, stand-up wise, he's much, 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 much funnier. But our paths are quite the same, because he, I believe, started out as an actor, and discovered he was sort of funny and sort of went that way. But, you know, you can see Richard on, Robin, on the early Richard Pryor shows, you know, the ones that Rocco Ribisi did. Robin's in there, and I want to say that, one ringy-dingy too, Lily Tomlin. I think Lily's in several of those as well. And, you know, to be able to improvise is a great safety mechanism. You're never lost. Listen, we didn't, you know, there weren't black people in commercials until like 1964, 65, you know. And I'll tell you, I believe the first one was Hattie Winston Wheeler. She's now Hattie Winston Wheeler, Harold Wheeler's wife. Harold Wheeler is the music director of Dancing with the Stars. And his wife, I believe, was the first black person I ever saw in a commercial. And I want to say it was Zest or Dial or one of those. Well, because I love Star Trek, and I thought, well, you know, maybe some kid will see me and think, oh, okay, we continue on, you know. And I wanted to be part of that because I just, you know, I love the show. And so when LeVar said he was doing it, I was like, oh, tell them I want to do it. And so I didn't hear from him for like almost a year. I was like, and then I saw him, I was like, what happened? Did you tell me? He said, I told them, they didn't believe me. I said, what's the phone number? So I called over there. I said, could I have an appointment? I would like to come in and be part of this. And they're like, oh, okay. And so I had Rick Berman and Gene Roddenberry. I went to lunch with them and explained what I told you about Lieutenant Uhura and why I wanted to be part of it. And Gene wrote a character called Guinan, who he named after Texas Guinan, which I loved. And I'm really, really old, and, you know, I come and go, and I wear cool hats. But they did like her because she was kind of like Yoda, but taller. Well, he failed in the sitcoms because they were sort of one-offs of other sitcoms. You know, when he was doing I Spy, that went on forever. And then he had one where he was a school coach, and it just wasn't well written. I mean, when you watch it now, it's just kind of like, ooh. And then the next one was just okay. And so, like many good storytellers, he needed to go to the story that he told the best, which was the family stories. And that's what he did better than anybody. Still, you know, nobody tells a better story about their family than he does. And I think once he made that decision, everyone said, yeah, okay, whatever. And gave him the freedom to do it as he saw fit. It was heaven. Had nothing to do with race. It was just a family. And that's why his stories were so great, because anybody, when he talks about he and his brother Russell, that could be anybody. That could be me and my big brother. That could be you and your brother or sister. You know, when he talks about, you know, the fact that he thought his name was Damn It for years, you know, that gets everybody because they also thought their name was Damn It, you know. So it's a universal conversation that he has that says, hey, look at this family. Now, I got this little girl, I just want to, you know, you want to bite her feet off, but you can't help but hug her. So she, you know, and I got these teenagers, and they don't listen. They let little children lie. I mean, nobody tells better stories than he does when it comes to the family unit. And that's why it worked, because it was about us, you know. It wasn't necessary. I mean, people kept saying, oh, it's a black family. And they missed the point, you know. And I feel like the only people who really said stuff like that were people who hadn't heard his material, where he's talking about, he and Camille, you know, and their youngest, when he said, didn't I tell you not to touch that? And they tell this story. It wasn't me. I was just, and he goes through this whole thing, and by the end of it, you're like, they all do this. They're all this tall, and they tell the same story. It doesn't matter what color they are, they tell the same story. It's like it's in their DNA. And that was why it worked, because we recognized all of these people in the family.